How it really ended. Anastasia. There are two kinds of people in this world. Those who will tell you that Anastasia is one of the best non-Disney princess animated films out there, and those who thought the movie was actually made by Disney. Back in 1997, 20th Century Fox and Don Bluth brought the world Anastasia, a magical animated feature film based on the real-life mystery of the Grand Duchess, who supposedly went missing back in 1918 and that many hoped had survived when her family was executed. This movie became a critical and commercial success and is even seen by many as a classic that can easily stand toe-to-toe with some of Disney's best efforts. Just to recap briefly, this movie takes place in early 19th century Russia, where Tsar Nicholas II is hosting a grand ball and his mother, Empress Maria Feodorovna, is visiting from Paris. Marie gives a music box and a necklace to her youngest granddaughter Anastasia as a parting gift. However, Rasputin interrupts the event. He places a curse on the Tsar and his family for banishing him and tells them that they will all be dead within the fortnight. Rasputin's curse sparks the Russian Revolution that sees an end to the monarchy and the demise of the royal family with the exception of Marie and Anastasia, who manage to escape. They almost break free completely, but Anastasia fails to board the train with her grandmother and is left behind, hitting her head and losing her memories. 10 years later, Russia is now under communist rule, and Marie is offering 10 million rubles to anyone who could reunite her with her granddaughter. The now older Anastasia meets Dmitri and Vladimir, two con men that want to use her resemblance to the Lost Duchess to get the reward money from Marie. It is only through their travels together that they discover that she really is the missing Anastasia and eventually reunite her with her grandmother in Paris. Rasputin attempts to kill Anastasia, but fails and in the end is destroyed. Dmitri and Anastasia elope, giving the movie a happy fuzzy ending that families everywhere could enjoy. Doesn't that ending make you feel all happy and fuzzy inside? Then you better grab a flashlight because things are going to get real dark. I feel like this should be more widely known, but I've met a fair share of people who don't know that Anastasia and the rest of the Tsar's family actually existed. Anastasia Romanova was born on June 8, 1901, and was the fourth daughter to Tsar Nicholas II. The Tsar and his family were all disappointed that she was born a girl, since they had all hoped for a boy that would become heir to the throne. The Tsar's children, despite being royalty, were all raised as simply as possible. They slept on hard cots with no pillows, took cold baths, cleaned their old rooms, and even did needlework that would be sold for charities. Anastasia grew up a happy and energetic child, and Margareta Egger, a governess to the four duchesses, even remarked that Anastasia had the greatest personal charm of any child she had ever seen. She was a bright and gifted child, but she was also as mischievous as they come. In fact, the son of the court physician is also quoted saying that she undoubtedly held the record for punishable deeds in her family. Not only did she trip her servants and play pranks on her tutors, but she would also climb trees and refuse to come down. During World War I, Anastasia and her sister Maria would visit wounded soldiers. Though they were both too young to become official Red Cross nurses like their mother and older sisters, they would play games of billiards and checkers with the soldiers in an effort to lift their spirits, and Anastasia even became recognized for her squirrel-like laughter. In February of 1917, Anastasia and the rest of her family were placed under house arrest at the Alexander Palace during the Russian Revolution. The stress of captivity began to take its toll on the Duchess, and she wrote to her friends saying goodbye and don't forget us. Anastasia and her other sisters would also regularly sew jewels into their dresses to hide them from their captors. While in captivity, Anastasia would always try to find ways to enjoy herself. She and other members of the household would perform plays for the enjoyment of her parents, and her tutor, Sidney Gibbs, would say that it was Anastasia's performances that always made everyone howl with laughter. One night, the family was awakened and told to get dressed because they were being moved to a new location to ensure their safety. After doing so, the family, some servants, and the physician mentioned earlier were all moved into the house's basement and told to wait for further instructions. A few moments later, a handful of guards entered the room and informed the Tsar that they were all going to be executed. The Tsar only had enough time to say what, and looked at his family before he and everyone else in the room were riddled with bullets. Once the smoke had cleared, it was revealed that Anastasia and her sister Maria were both still alive due to the jewels they had sewn into their clothes. The two girls had crouched up against a wall, covering their heads in terror. They were shot again, this time killing them both. Unlike in the animated film, Anastasia's grandmother did not live in Paris, but instead stayed in Russia. She received the reports that her son and family were all executed and publicly rejected this as nothing more but a rumor. She refused to believe this news and in her diary wrote, "I am sure they all got out of Russia, and now the Bolsheviks are trying to hide the truth." She could never come to accept the reality of what happened to her son, and always had hope that they had somehow survived. She never put out a reward for her missing family like the movie suggested, and continued to be a heartbroken old woman. Marie remained in denial until her own death, 10 years later at the age of 80. Contrary to what the animated film makes you think, Grigory Rasputin was actually a dear friend of the Romanov family. He was no sorcerer, he did not betray them, and he was never banished. Rasputin would write several letters to the Tsar, pleading with him to seek peaceful solutions in times of turmoil, and was an overall spiritual and peaceful man. When the Tsar finally did give birth to a son, he was born with hemophilia B, a hereditary disease that prevents blood from clotting properly. Many Russian doctors and medics attempted to treat the Tsar's son, but the bleeding only got worse. Desperate, the Tsar's wife Alexandra called Rasputin as a last resort, who told her that God had heard her prayers and not to let the doctors trouble her son because he will not die. Coincidentally, the hemorrhaging stopped the next day and the young heir began to recover. It is from this moment on that Alexandra believed in Rasputin and defended anyone that would speak ill against him. Rasputin was also very close to the 4 duchesses and would often talk to them about religion and spirituality. In December 1916, Rasputin was assassinated. The 4 grand duchesses appeared cold and visibly upset by the news of their friend's death. Rasputin was buried with an icon signed on the back by Anastasia, her mother, and sisters. The royal family had intended on building a church over the site of Rasputin's grave before they themselves were killed. After the royal family was executed, it was found that Anastasia and all her sisters wore amulets bearing Rasputin's picture and a prayer. There are those who are very critical of his close ties to the Romanov family, while there are others that just see Rasputin as a loyal friend to the family and a man of peace. What he was not, however, was a man who sold his soul to the devil, that had a personal vendetta against the family and wanted them dead. I understand that the source material behind the movie was very detailed and complex. I also know that the possibility of a long-lost duchess that survived her family's execution builds the foundation for an interesting tale. What I don't understand though is why Don Bluth and co. had to necessarily title the movie Anastasia. They could have made this movie based in almost any country and changed the names of the characters and it would have still been just as good a movie. I admit I liked this movie quite a bit when I was younger, but as I grew older and learned the actual history behind it, it started to leave a bad taste in my mouth. Rasputin was a dear friend to the family, and in the animated film he's reduced to a 2-dimensional villain that's directly responsible for the family being killed. To make this a bit more relatable, imagine if 100 years from now, Hollywood made an animated movie where the Prime Minister of Canada and his talking moose hatch a plot to destroy the Twin Towers, but an elf and a human discovered this terrible plan and sang and danced their way to Washington to team up with Wizard George Bush, who managed to use their magic to get everyone out of the buildings and planes just in time, and everyone lives happily ever after. Except for the Prime Minister, who gets imprisoned in the maple tree and the moose is given his own spin-off movie. Thanks for watching everyone. Be sure to click those like and subscribe buttons below, and be sure to check out my last video in this series, How Cinderella Really Ended. As always, stay tuned for more and stay awesome.